Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we are back talking about different charts that I use to get a pulse on the market. I had a client in the fast track group ask me just the other day, what are the 5 to 10 different specific charts on TradingView that you're watching to get the macro picture on what's happening in the markets. So in this video, I'm going to go through those 10 specific charts directly in TradingView. And this is important to get the full picture so that you can make informed decisions when doing DeFi liquidity provision, when thinking about building your treasury, and when thinking about continuing to purchase assets to gain financial freedom in the crypto space. So without further ado, let's jump in and look at some of those key charts and indicators. Okay, so that first chart that I'm typically looking at on a daily basis to get a full macro picture and a pulse on everything that's happening is, of course, the Bitcoin chart. At the time of recording this video, we're sitting a little bit above 108,000 US dollars, but at any given time, I know that Bitcoin is typically the market leader when it comes to crypto, and I need to understand what Bitcoin is doing to get further and additional context on what most of the rest of the market is going to do as well. Again, Ethereum, Solana, Sui, many other leading protocols will follow in the footsteps of Bitcoin with whatever it is doing, typically on a larger percentage basis. So that means if Bitcoin makes a 5 to 10% move to the upside, you'll often see Ethereum or Solana doing a 10 to 20% move to the upside as well. The same thing happens on the downside, but I need to have a very good understanding of how Bitcoin is behaving, and that gives me a very good pulse on what alts are likely to do in very hot pursuit. So hopefully that's making sense. The other thing to look at here is just the macro trend, zooming out to a weekly chart, understanding Bitcoin and what it's doing on a more macro level, and the very strong uptrend that we've been in all the way back since this lows of the bear market back in 2022. We're maintaining a very, very strong uptrend to the upside, even though it can very much feel like choppiness at times. Bitcoin is moving very healthily and strongly to that upside with very, very good momentum over a long time horizon. Okay, the next chart I'm typically taking a look at is actually overlaid with Bitcoin. This is something we've looked at a lot over the past few months, which is global M2. As an indicator, global M2 liquidity index is the one I like to use here directly on TradingView. And we know that there is a high degree of correlation between Bitcoin following global M2. If you're not familiar with global M2 is essentially a measure of all cash reserves across major economies in banking accounts. And again, what we typically see is as global M2 increases and moves to the upside, as we're clearly seeing over the past number of months, Bitcoin follows with about an 85% degree of accuracy. Is that guaranteed to continue? Of course not, but there is a pretty nice correlation here between global M2 moving to the upside, and even when it's moving to the downside, we see an offset with Bitcoin taking typically somewhere in the region of 8 to 12 weeks to follow in the price action and the price steps of global M2. So with global M2 continuing to increase and put in new all-time highs, this gets me pretty excited about the next 6 to 12 months, where we could be moving for Bitcoin and how it might continue to follow global M2 with that pattern of an 8 to 12 week delay, just like we've been seeing for the past couple of years. The next chart I want to take a look at is, of course, Ethereum. As a leading indicator for what's happening with the altcoin market, Ethereum continues to be extremely important. So if you're providing liquidity to a USDC pool, or you're providing liquidity to any Ethereum-based ERC20 token or asset, it's going to be important to have a pulse on what Ethereum is doing. Again, ERC20 tokens and tokens in the EVM and Ethereum ecosystem will often outperform Ethereum when it moves to the upside, and often underperform Ethereum when Ethereum moves to the downside. They will move back on a sharper degree or a sharper percentage. And so understanding where Ethereum is at, what kind of moves it's putting in here, we can see clearly it's been consolidating for a long time over the past 4 or 5 weeks since the middle of May. That gives me an insight into what alts are doing and how alts might be setting up for the next few months of the cycle. Again, I'd love to see Ethereum truly reclaim this 200-day simple moving average and continue to move higher. That's going to be a catalyst for altcoins to have a nice rally, just like we saw back in Q4 of 2024, when Ethereum made that move to the upside. Here we can see how altcoins had a very strong rally into the end of the year. I'm looking for something similar to happen here, and getting a pulse on Ethereum's price action every single day helps me to do that. Okay. The next key chart I take a look at every single day is Bitcoin dominance. If you're not familiar with Bitcoin dominance sitting at 65.45% simply means that Bitcoin's market cap makes up 65.45% of total crypto market cap. If we zoom back out to a weekly chart, what we can see here is a bigger picture and the fact that Bitcoin dominance has been in a very strong uptrend for the past number of years. This is coming on 3 years. We've maintained a very strong uptrend here, and we haven't seen any major sign of a breakdown. We had a very small breakdown here back in Q4 of 2024 when we had that Ethereum rally, but historically speaking, what we've seen with Bitcoin dominance in previous cycles is that when we get a large breakdown in Bitcoin dominance, that is typically the start of your altcoin season. So many of us are watching and waiting and keeping a very close eye on this Bitcoin dominance chart to see if we're going to get that extended breakdown in this cycle. And that could act as the trigger and the catalyst for altcoin season to truly begin. Again, will it happen? Will it not? In my opinion, I think we will get a true altcoin season in some capacity. I'm just not sure if it's going to be as strong of a breakdown on a percentage basis compared to what we saw in 2021, and going back even further to 2017. This percentage breakdown was even larger. We have seen diminishing returns in terms of Bitcoin dominance breaking down. I do still think it will happen, but let's wait and see. And this is another key chart that I watch every single day to make sure I understand where we're at in the cycle and if and when Bitcoin dominance might be ready to break to the downside. The next key chart that I look at is total crypto market cap. And again, if I zoom back into the daily chart here, we can see that we've been consolidating nicely above that 200-day simple moving average. We got to break back above it here at the beginning of May with a big candle to the upside. We chopped sideways. We came back down to retest that 200-day. We got a really nice bounce. And this consolidation period here over the past couple of months is looking pretty nice and healthy for me if I'm trying to be objective from a TA standpoint. If we can accumulate here a little bit further, I'd love to see us have a nice breakout of this bullish flag pattern to keep moving higher and put in some new all-time highs for total crypto market cap later this year. This tells me what's happening in the macro sense of things in the total crypto market. And again, you might look and think about your own targets for where you think total crypto market cap could get to by the peak of the cycle. Again, some of the targets that I have in mind in a bearish case scenario, getting to 5 trillion, a base at 7 trillion, and a bull case at 9 trillion. Yes, that is a lot of growth yet to happen in this potential cycle. Let's see how it plays out. But getting a pulse check on that every single day helps me to understand where we're at in the market cycle and how we might see price action moving for the entire crypto market as a whole. And of course, that plays into help me make more informed decisions. The next chart I want to look at is the stablecoin dominance. Okay, if I jump back over here, that is the wrong chart. If I jump in here and go back to the daily, stablecoin dominance is a pretty nice indicator for how stablecoins and people in the market are actually behaving. So I want to draw your attention to a couple of things on this particular chart. What you'll notice is as stablecoin dominance increases and decreases, it paints a picture for the psychology of the market and how people are actually acting. When you see a drawdown in stablecoin dominance, just like we saw here from September 2024 through December 2024, this means that as stablecoin dominance comes to the downside, investors are rotating out of stablecoins and investing in Bitcoin and altcoins. Of course, that means stablecoin dominance has to go down when the market cap of Bitcoin and alts is increasing. But notice what happens as soon as Bitcoin and alts stop increasing in price, you will see people beginning to take profits. That is this kind of month to 6 week pattern playing out here. And then as stablecoin dominance begins to increase again, this is the market rotating out of Bitcoin and altcoins and back into stablecoins. There's two main reasons for that. Number one is if you did it down here and you took some nice profits, that's going to help you rotate out of rotate out of Bitcoin, and stablecoin dominance will begin to increase. And then as price of Bitcoin and alts continues to drop, certain market participants will get fearful and they will start to sell out of those actual Bitcoin and altcoin positions back into stablecoins to mitigate losses, driving stablecoin dominance even higher. Again, you can see we found a key level of resistance here on the chart that we found multiple times going back to January of 2024. We hit that level once again in August. We hit it again in September, and we found a little bit of resistance here again in March of 2025. And since March, we know that Bitcoin price has been rallying until we've seen dominance of stablecoins decreasing as people begin to rotate back into Bitcoin, back into altcoins. And we're currently sitting, as you can see, at a key level of resistance right on the 200-day simple moving average. The last time we broke below the 200-day simple moving average was back upon confirmation in the US of those election results. And this was a rally for Bitcoin and the market as stablecoin dominance broke to the downside. Again, what I'm looking for is, can we break below the 200-day simple moving average for stablecoin dominance? Because that will trigger that next leg up Bitcoin and alts, and we'll see what happens over the coming weeks and months. But this is another key chart that gives me a really good pulse on what's happening here and what I can expect for the market momentum and moves. The next chart I want to mention is stablecoin market cap. Okay. If I jump over here, looking at the individual market caps of USDT Tether and USDC Circle is another pretty healthy indicator to give me a picture on what's happening in the markets. Just look at the increase, the monumental increase in the USDT Tether stablecoin market cap over the past few months. Even just since April of this year, a few months ago, we've seen a further 10+% increase in Tether's market cap. What this signals to me is, of course, we're getting better regulatory clarity in the United States with the Genius Act, but we're seeing stablecoin issuers continuing to tokenize and US dollars on blockchain technology. That increases the capacity for more liquidity in the cycle, especially when retail investors enter here later in a few months. And I think this sets up the entire market for a lot of success over the coming months, as long as we see that stablecoin market cap continuing to increase to the upside. If I look at USDC Circle, I can also see a similar pattern. We've had a very sharp increase here in the amount of stablecoin minted during Q4 of 2024 and into Q1 of 2025. And it's not quite as dramatic as USDT, but we can still see another increase here of a further almost 3% in the past month or two with the market cap of USDC. Again, these are the two leading stablecoins in the entire market, and they paint a really nice picture as to what is going to continue to happen with liquidity and inflows later in the cycle. Next up, the other chart I like to look at is Total 3 minus USDT and USDC against Bitcoin. This chart paints a pretty nice picture for the price action that we will see if and when alts break out of this downtrend against Bitcoin priced in Bitcoin terms. So what this chart is basically telling us is the vast majority of altcoins have been underperforming against Bitcoin when priced in Bitcoin terms, going all the way back to these highs back in December. Okay, last time, if I zoom out on the weekly here, last time we saw this chart come right down to this level of support, we had a really sharp break to the upside. And this back here in 2021, this was your true altcoin season. Having and finding support, we bounced off of this level multiple times. We actually wicked below it here very briefly for a couple of weeks before making that parabolic move to the upside with alts against Bitcoin when priced in Bitcoin. So what I'm looking for is for us to see, hopefully, this level holding as support, getting a breakout of this downtrend, seeing this chart moving to the upside. It's going to be a really good signal that altcoins are beginning to outperform Bitcoin when priced in Bitcoin terms. Again, shout out to Benjamin Cowan for this chart. If you want this chart, drop a comment below the video and I will send you the custom coding for TradingView so you can map this out on your own computer. Finally, The other thing I like to look at is SPX because, of course, what's happening in the macro markets with stocks and equities does ultimately have an impact on what's happening here in the crypto markets. As we can see, the S&P has been moving to fresh all-time highs over the past week or two, and this bodes well, in my opinion, for Bitcoin and crypto as a whole. If we can see the S&P continue to recover from this V-shape move that we made in Q1, and it has been continuing to recover, I think we could see a pretty strong Q3 and Q4 in 2025 for Bitcoin and the crypto market alongside equities. So I'm excited to see how that happens and potentially plays out over the coming months, because there is a pretty nice correlation between what's happening with these charts in equities overall, capital flowing into risk on assets if we get further rate cuts, and I'm always watching that S&P to help make those informed decisions. So that is it for today's video, guys. I know it was a little bit of a longer one, but I wanted to get through all of those key charts and indicators that I use every single day to get a pulse on the markets. Helps me keep informed about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and alts, how I'm making decisions about providing liquidity, how I'm making decisions about asset allocation, and hopefully it's useful for you too. Make sure to drop a thumbs up on the video below, hit subscribe, check out the links for the UIG. If you want to get support, we have the Fast Track team ready and on hand to help you take your DeFi skill set to the next level. Check out the links below, and we'll catch you in the next one.